Hey everyone, hi. In this video, I wanted to talk about LMIA, which stands for Labor Market Impact Assessment. So, I've been seeing in many of the forums and many of the chats in some of the WhatsApp group that I am on, uh, there is a very keen question by many applicants who wants to understand how to get a LMIA. Okay. Now, LMIA or the Labor Market Impact Assessment, the first thing we need to understand about it is that this is not something that an applicant can apply. Okay, this is something that the employer who is hiring the applicant needs to get if he wants to hire a foreign worker. Okay, so say if you're working in India, working in US, and want to come and work in Canada, then your employer might need a LMIA. So the important word is might. Okay, it's not always mandatory. I will go into the further details about this LMIA in the next slides, but what I wanted to clarify right at the start is that this is an employer specific document. Okay, and this is not a mandatory document. Okay, this is only required in some cases, and there are many cases where it's not required also, right? So if you want to work in Canada, this document is required for certain job categories. There are many categories for which this is not required. Okay. The next confusion that I see people asking online is that is there any kind of relation between LMIA and your PR application? Okay. So the LMIA and PR applications are related to the extent that your PR application relates to your job offer. Okay. If you have a job offer which needs LMIA, then you need LMIA details. Okay. If your job is something which doesn't need LMIA, you don't need LMIA. Okay. So it all depends on the job. Okay. On the job offer that you are claiming during the PR application. So that is to the extent LMIA and PR is related. So who needs a LMIA? And the very simple answer to that is the employer needs to apply for that LMIA. So when an employer is giving you a job, he needs to assess whether the job that he's offering you needs a LMIA. Right? There are certain categories of job who doesn't need LMIA. For example, intercompany transfer. If you are working for the same company in India or USA, and they are transferring you to Canada to work, you don't need a LMIA. You still need a job offer and all those documents, but you don't need a LMIA. So the first thing and the responsibility to check the requirement of LMIA is on the employer. Next important question to understand is whether LMIA is mandatory for PR, and the short answer is no. If your job doesn't need a LMIA or your employer doesn't need a LMIA, then LMIA is not required even for your PR application, right? So there are categories of jobs, there are a lot of categories of jobs that needs LMIA, and there are a lot of jobs that doesn't need LMIA. So there are a lot of tools available in the canada.ca site, from where your employer can check out whether he needs an LMIA to hire you, right? So in short, LMIA is required for working, not for PR. So how to get a LMIA? This section would interest from an employer point of view. There are links available online from where your employer can get information on how to get an LMIA. So you can always refer to this link. I'm posting that link in the description also. So you can help your employer by sharing this information with them. As a worker or as a employer, if you are keen on how much time does it take to process an LMIA, It keeps on changing, but the current processing time is here. I'll put a link of this page also in the description. So depending on what type of application you have, the processing time can differ. I wanted to share some examples specific to LMIA. So there is a process, as you can see here, about hiring a worker without a LMIA. So this basically means that you can still have a job offer to work in Canada and doesn't need a LMIA. So this confirms that LMIA is not a mandatory document. Also, if you look into the documentation requirements for your express entry or your PR application, it also clearly says that you need a LMIA only if you have one. So it's not a mandatory document for PR application again, right? So let's remove the confusion when we are preparing for our documentation for PR. I'm trying to help everyone here in trying to give information so that you can get ready with your documentation requirements for your PR. So whenever you are preparing your documentation of PR, I would suggest give more attention on having a valid job offer, which is more important. And with that job offer, you get 50 extra points for the arranged employment, and in many provinces, job offer is required, right? Even though job offer is not mandatory for the federal express entry, it is required, what I have seen in most of the provincial nomination programs. There are cases where people have got PR without any job offer in Canada. They get a PR, come to Canada, and then get a job, right? That's also possible. So LMIA is kind of a very technical piece of documentation which is required in certain specific cases. I'm not sure how people are there is a lot of misinformation online, and I think some of it is coming from some of the employers who have not yet also applied for an LMIA or gone through that process. Maybe they are asking the candidates that, hey, do I need a LMIA for you or not? So to that, I would say the employers should be able to check that information and resolve that. You can also help them by sharing the links that I am putting in this presentation below, the description of the presentation below. So yeah, share it with your employer, have a look at yourself, remove any confusions related to LMIA. And if you have any questions for me, put it on the comment and I'll try and help. So yeah, till the next video, see you, and all the best with your application.